Once again, a warm welcome to all of you who have been part of our Chowder and Chat for the past 5 weeks now. Once again, we wish to extend to the kitchen crew sincere thanks for all the work that you do. For those who perhaps missed last week we spoke about St. Anthony's Church. We actually, for those who weren't here, I actually, if you recall, did not do a presentation per se, in that Father Bill Costello had put together in the 90s, no, not in the 90s, the 90th anniversary of the parish, put together a wonderful video history of the parish. So that video history will be online by Monday of this week. I don't think, with all that's going on upstairs and confirmation coming this week, I don't think we put it on yet. But
it was on yesterday, because I
was
away for the week, but I watched it.
Okay.
It was yesterday I watched it.
So it is on. So Jonathan did get it on. So it's probably the best way to look at the history of St. Anthony's. And in a Cliff Note version, St. Anthony's Parish was founded by Portuguese immigrants, primarily from the Azorean Islands, who came to this region to work in the strawberry fields. And they felt the need, because they did not speak English, many of them, that they wanted to continue the culture and the language from which they were from. So that's why they petitioned for a priest to come here, began saying masses on Brick Hill Road. At the end of Brick Hill Road, there's the St. Anthony's Hall. That's where they began. And then in the early 20s, this church was built. And it has the reputation of being the church that was built on strawberries, because it was really the strawberry growers, and Father Fortuna, who was the first pastor, just went to them every month. I don't know if it was every week or every month, and he would say, you know, I need the kashkal, you know, to be able, and it was. And then many of them worked throughout the, after working a full day in the fields, coming here in the evening and building what we have now, the main body of the church. And that will be celebrating our 100th anniversary here in about 4 years. The wings were put on in the late 50s and late 60s rather. No, late 50s, early 60s. And really hasn't had a major renovation. Certainly there's been updating, and Father Costello had a painting done, Father Mullaney did. This is pretty much the most extensive renovation that the church has had since those times. So it's almost done. I know many of you have been coming upstairs, and you're welcome to. The carpets is almost in, so if you do go upstairs, take off your shoes. But we're getting ready tomorrow for confirmation, and actually we can learn something from our youth, because for a number of years now, I don't even know how long, but it's probably close to 8-10 years, confirmation has been celebrated here in Falmouth as one confirmation with the 3 parishes. So it's at first there was some hesitancy about that. Well, what do you mean we're going to be all coming together as one? And I know there was a little resistance at first, but now it's just very commonplace for us. The kids don't think anything odd of it, the parents don't think anything odd of it, and it works beautifully. And the children, most of which are from similar schools. Certainly the majority are from Falmouth High School, but we also have them from Mashpee, St. John Paul II, the vocational school. So they're all together. We had a rehearsal with them on Wednesday night, and the kids are like, yeah, that's fine. We're doing it together. So maybe we can be inspired by them as we go forward. So today, as you know, we've talked before that the Catholic community of Falmouth is comprised right now of 3 parishes, St. Patrick's, St. Anthony's, and St. Elizabeth Seton, as well as the 2 chapels, one of which being a former parish, St. Joseph's, and also, as we learned a couple of weeks ago, a former parish, St. Thomas on the Heights. But years ago, as I mentioned, these chapels and parishes were configured much differently. It was in 1899 that St. Patrick's Church was built as a mission or a chapel of St. Joseph's. And Father Thomas Kennedy was appointed the 3rd pastor of St. Joseph's in Woods Hole, and its mission church was St. Patrick's. In the early 1900s, 2 additional mission chapels were established in the area. One was in the St. Thomas Chapel, as we know, on the Heights. And then in 1915, in the Magansett section of Falmouth, there was another chapel established. In 1931, there was a reconfiguration, you might recall this, of the parishes and chapels once again. Father James Coyle, who had come to Falmouth in 1928 as pastor of St. Thomas Parish, was now the pastor of St. Patrick's and Parish, and St. Thomas Parish was suppressed, and it remained a chapel. Meanwhile, while all that is happening down on the Heights, up in North Falmouth, Immaculate Conception Chapel was established in the early 1900s, and that was serving the people of North Falmouth, West Falmouth, and Hatchville. The building that you see here now as a chapel was originally, and this was something I learned, a summer movie house, or some refer to it as a casino, very much like down on the Heights. So there was a casino-type building up in North Falmouth, and it was located on County Road. It had been abandoned as a movie house and casino years earlier. So here's this abandoned building that the people of the area said, hey, maybe we could use that building for Mass and establish the chapel. So the first Mass was said here at this building on July 16th, 1915. And it was eventually purchased by Father Kennedy in September of 1920, so little under 100 years ago. This became the church building for the people of North Falmouth until in 1977, the establishment of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish. Until 1977, this chapel was under the guidance of St. Patrick's Parish in Woods Hole. In the mid-1970s, Bishop Daniel Cronin, Bishop of Fall River, decided to establish a parish. Remember, it's a chapel, Immaculate Conception, but it decided to establish a parish in that area. And plans were drawn up, and in 1977, Father Joe Powers was appointed as the first pastor, and a new church was built and dedicated on July 17th, 1977. And it was under the title of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, the first American-born citizen to be elevated to sainthood. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton was canonized on September 14th, 1975. So if you figure that 1977, in July, the parish was begun, and I was trying to see if it was the first, but it was certainly one of the first parishes in the United States to be honored with the title of the new saint, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. The church is built in the shape of a cross, similar to what we have upstairs, 2 wings. And it can accommodate about 650 people, which is more or less what can be accommodated upstairs as well. The stained glass windows represent the biblical characters and events of salvation history from Abraham to the crucifixion. The windows in the west, in the wings of the church, many of them were conceived by Father Powers, and they were custom made. They represented, and I wanted to get pictures of it, but I just couldn't get up there this week, representing, but they are beautiful, the Universal Church, the rich beginnings of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish, including the Mother Church, St. Joseph in Woods Hole, as well as the Chapel of the Immaculate Conception in Magansett and the representation of St. Elizabeth Seton. So with the suppression of St. Joseph's Parish as a parish 5 years ago, St. Joseph's Parish now became a chapel of St. Elizabeth's. So once again, we see, as there's a shift in demographics, that things change and the parishes and the church of the community in Falmouth adjusts to those changes. And, but one of the beautiful things that I don't know if many people realize, but in the, what is now the sacristy of St. Elizabeth Seton, that originally was constructed, it's a huge sacristy. I went in to look the other day as I'm beginning to kind of look around at things. And it's a huge sacristy. Well, what it was originally a chapel of, it was, when they built the new church, they built a chapel in the church. And the window of that chapel is Immaculate Conception. So it was a reminder that we don't want to lose our roots, even though things change. And I just want to reemphasize that with you. Even if those things change, does not mean that we forget or not value our roots. And so I think that was a wonderful idea that they had. Where the problem existed, and we should have all these problems, is that from its conception, right from the beginning, that little chapel became too small for daily mass goers. So that's why they brought it out into the church. But it shows very clearly to the people the roots of Immaculate Conception Chapel. Today, St. Elizabeth Seton is home to about 1,100 families. And of course we know, as with most of our churches, but particularly in that area, the number of communicants increased greatly, as North Falmouth is a very popular area for summer residents. So because St. Elizabeth's is the youngest of the parishes here in Falmouth, that's about it for the history. I mean, Father Moore, Monsignor Moore, did a renovation there in the late 1990s and just at the turn of the millennium. And it's just continued to be just a wonderful faith community. A lot of devotional activities happen there following all of the masses. It's got a wonderful spirit about it, and it's still thriving pretty much so as a parish. But as we see, and as we have heard throughout these presentations, the town, the Catholic community of Falmouth, continues to adapt to the changes of the area, the changes of the church. Where are the needs? And I'm sure if we can, have lived through those, or we certainly can think of our ancestors who have been here, any change is a challenge. And yet, if those changes didn't happen, the church would have collapsed in this area, would have died. Could you imagine if you go back and say, St. Joseph's can only be the only church? That's the way it was. But where would we be today if we had said, no, we can't go on. We just got to keep it the way it is. So in that light, what we're going to do next week is we've talked a lot about the past. We've talked a bit about the present, But now what I'd like to do next week is speak with you about the future and kind of some of what is going on. I know, again, we're at a point in our time, in our life in Falmouth that we're maybe a little apprehensive of where the future is leading us. But I firmly believe, and with all confidence can say, that the Lord has walked this journey with us for the past 100+ years, is not going to give up on us now. So we can't give up on ourselves. And what we need to do is just continue to be open to the movement of the Spirit so that we can continue to grow the faith community of the Catholic community here in Falmouth. So next week we'll give you just a little bit of some of what we're hoping to accomplish by this word that one person said to me, oh, it's nasty, that's collaboration. Well, what would we rather do? Fight? So what does this collaboration, why we're here, and how it's going to look in the next year or so? That's about all I can look forward is a year. I have no idea where it's going to look 10 years, but with God as our guide, the Lord is going to guide us, His Spirit's going to be with us, and we're going to be, I know, a stronger community going forward, as we have in the past. So thank you very, very much, and we'll see all of you, God willing, next week for our final Chowder and Chat. I would like to, hold your applause. I would like to mention that, and maybe you could spread the word, that next week, we're going to have at 11:30 Stations of the Cross upstairs. Yay. I think. I've learned at this point to say maybe, I think, I hope, but it looks pretty good that next week we will be able to celebrate Stations of the Cross upstairs in the renovated church. So hopefully you'll come for that as well. That for me would be, frankly, the high point of Chowder and Chat as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see you next week for that. Thanks a lot.